Out of the Dark, a story by a Reddit user. My first experience with the supernatural was one of the most terrible life experiences I can remember. It happened when I was young and dumb. I wanted to go into the world and explore while I was out of my home country of Canada. I witnessed a horror I soon hoped to forget. I had gone on a trip with some of my buddies to Montana, just below my home province of Alberta. We were originally going to stay in Yellowstone National Park, but decided to head to Glacier National Park first, before camping out at Yellowstone for a few days. We finally reached Glacier Park about a 6-hour drive later, and had just enough time to do a little hiking before going to our hotel in a nearby town. We had gotten to the park around 4:30 p.m. and decided it was a great idea to do some night hiking. So we hiked up the trail to look at the glorious views of rivers and waterfalls. The light began to fade rather quickly while we were about 2/3 of the way up, and we had hiked about 10 kilometers. So it was going to take us about 2 hours to walk back down at that point. This is when shit goes downhill. Myself and my friends were all outdoorsmen. We loved to go hiking and travel around the Rocky Mountains. But we were still inexperienced when it came to night hiking. Since the trail we were on wasn't as traveled at this point of the hike, it was harder to follow in the dark. Although every now and then, we would see a sign that notified us that we were going in the right direction. At some point, maybe a third of the way down the mountain, we ended up going off the trail, following a little rabbit trail, thinking that we were on the correct path. We began to figure out that we were definitely not going the right way. My friend checked his compass, and it showed we were heading deeper into the Rocky Mountains, with miles and miles of forest. Then begins the mass panic. My friends and I immediately turned around and began walking back the way we came. But the trail we were following didn't look the same as it did when we were going up. We began to get more confused and even more lost. All of a sudden, we collectively noticed how quiet it had gotten. No insects, no birds, nothing. It was dead silence. As a hunter, I knew this was a bad sign. Because when it gets quiet like that, it means that there's a large predator, and he or she is hunting too. We all started to get anxiety when I let everyone in on my hunch of what was going on. We had literally become prey to some large beast, some unknown large beast in the forest. That's when we hear it. A noise that brought terror. A screeching, guttural howl from up the mountain. It was then followed by many more. Your heart hopes, your head hopes, your whole body hopes at that point that it's just a mountain lion. but I knew it wasn't. I'd heard those before. My heart went into my throat, and the terror that I felt made me shake. My friends were shaking too. All but 2 of them had already dipped and were running as fast as they could back where we came. We all followed soon behind, running ourselves ragged, until we looked behind us and saw the eyes shining in the darkness. The eyes shining of something that was much larger than we had anticipated. The eyes were at least 6 feet off the ground and moving towards us fast. That's when we split up, running in random directions, hoping to lose these beasts. It was never going to happen. I could hear the breath, feel the breath of one of these things about 20 feet behind me and gaining. All of a sudden, my friend appeared from the trees to my right and we end up running together until I cut off from him, hoping to escape. I know I left him to die that night. But it was a last-ditch effort to escape, and it worked to my advantage. I heard his screams from my left and ran as fast as I could, far away from those screams. Tears streaming down my face. I could hear his screams for help and his shrieking in pain. All of a sudden, I heard nothing, as if he never existed. I continued running down the mountain until I saw a familiar sight ahead of me. It was a trail sign pointing out the parking lot. I got my bearings and I heard the howling again. Howling behind me, getting closer and closer. I ran as fast as I could, harder than I ever have. I zoomed past the parking lot sign. I hit the button on my keys as I reached in my pocket, unlocking my doors. I slammed into the side of my car, ripped my door open and dove in. I started the car. I look out my window and towards the trail entrance, see 2 pairs of eyes staring at me briefly before they disappear into the darkness. I arrived at the ranger station by the park entrance and ran inside looking disheveled and terrified. When I explained to the ranger what had happened, he just gave me a sad look, almost a knowing look, like he wasn't surprised, like he knew something like that was going to happen. He called up a search party for the following day, but my friends were never found.